The wedding ring made no sound as it touched the wooden table. Zara Kamonihon stood in darkness, 8 months pregnant, her hand trembling over unsigned divorce papers. Beside them, she placed a sealed envelope. Open this only when you learn who I really am. Outside, Busan's peaceful harbor street shattered into silence as a convoy of matte black armored vehicles arrived before dawn. 12 executives in immaculate suits formed 2 perfect lines. They did not greet a president. They bowed, deeply, reverently, to the pregnant woman everyone believed was poor. Upstairs, behind a curtain, Kong Tae-jun watched his wife escorted into the flagship limousine. Before the door closed, she looked back. Their eyes met. She smiled through tears. Then she disappeared forever. He never even knew her real name. Please like, share, and subscribe. 6 months earlier, Busan Harbor breathed with morning fog. Kong Tae-jun stood at his office window, 43 floors above the city. His reflection revealed a man carved from discipline, sharp jawline, piercing dark eyes, charcoal suit cut to perfection. On his neck, partially hidden by his collar, the edge of his Korean-African symbolic tattoo emerged like a whispered secret. The tattoo depicted intertwined baobab roots and Korean pine. Legacy, grief, and absolute authority fused into permanent ink. Below him, cargo ships moved like chess pieces across the harbor. His empire. Yet his eyes drifted toward a small flower shop near the waterfront. Her shop. Sir. His assistant, Secretary Park, entered silently. The shareholders are waiting. Tae-jun didn't turn. How long has she been awake? Secretary Park hesitated. Mrs. Kong opened the shop at 5 this morning. She's been arranging lilies for 3 hours. 3 hours. Alone. While he built kingdoms, Zara Kamonihon watered flowers in a shop smaller than his bathroom. They had been married 14 months. He still didn't understand her. The flower shop smelled of earth and rain. Zara moved between buckets of roses and orchids, her hands gentle, her expression peaceful. At 27, she possessed a beauty that didn't demand attention. It simply existed, like morning light through glass. Warm brown skin. Graceful movements. Eyes that held something deeper than sadness. Something like waiting. She touched her stomach instinctively, then pulled her hand away before anyone could notice. 8 weeks. The pregnancy test had confirmed what her body already knew. She was carrying Kong Tae-jun's child. And she hadn't told him. The bell above her door chimed. An elderly woman entered, struggling with an umbrella. Mrs. Yoon. Zara smiled warmly. Your usual chrysanthemums? You remember. I remember everyone. As Zara wrapped the flowers, Mrs. Yoon studied her. Such a kind girl. Your husband is lucky. Zara's smile flickered. He works very hard. Too hard to visit his own wife's shop. The question hung in the air like unspoken truth. Tae-jun had never visited her flower shop. Not once. That evening, Zara returned to their penthouse apartment, a cold cathedral of glass and marble that never felt like home. She found Tae-jun in his study, reviewing documents. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing the tattoo that wrapped around his wrist like a bracelet of thorns. The baobab pine design seemed to pulse under lamplight. You're home, she said softly. He didn't look up. I have meetings until midnight. I made dinner. I'll eat later. Silence stretched between them like a frozen river. Zara approached his desk slowly. Tae-jun, there's something I need to tell you. His pen stopped. He looked up, finally, truly looked at her, and she saw exhaustion behind his piercing eyes. Exhaustion and something else. Suspicion. What is it? Her lips parted. The words gathered in her throat like held breath. I'm pregnant. I love you. I'm not who you think I am. But before she could speak, his phone rang. He answered without hesitation. Yes. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He stood, grabbed his jacket, and walked past her without a glance. The door closed. Zara stood alone in the empty penthouse, her hand pressed against her still flat stomach. Tomorrow, she promised herself. I'll tell him tomorrow. Taejun had not always been suspicious. During their first year of marriage, he had believed Zara was exactly what she appeared, a simple, beautiful woman who ran a flower shop and asked for nothing. She never touched his credit cards, never attended his business events, never asked about his wealth. At first, he found it refreshing. Then he found it strange. Then he found it alarming. What woman wants nothing? The question haunted him until he did something unforgivable. He ordered an investigation. Secretary Park placed a thin folder on his desk 2 weeks later. The preliminary report on Mrs. Kong. Taejun's jaw tightened. His fingers brushed the folder, hesitating. What did you find? Nothing. Nothing. Park's expression was troubled. That's the problem, sir. Your wife has no financial records before 5 years ago. No family history. No employment records. Her identity begins in Nairobi, Kenya, but all trails disappear before that. Taejun's blood cooled. Someone erased her past. Professionally erased, Park confirmed. This level of concealment requires significant resources. We're talking government-level discretion. The tattoo on Taejun's neck seemed to burn as old wounds reopened. History repeating. Years ago, before Zara, there had been another woman. A woman who had hidden her true intentions until she nearly destroyed his company. He had sworn never to be deceived again. And now his current wife had no past. Dig deeper, Taejun ordered, his voice dangerously quiet. Find out who she really is. Over the following weeks, Taejun became a ghost in his own marriage. He watched Zara more carefully now. Noticed how she sometimes spoke on the phone in languages he didn't recognize. How certain news broadcasts made her expression flicker with recognition. How she occasionally moved with a grace that seemed trained rather than natural. Each observation fed his suspicion. Each suspicion built walls between them. Zara felt the distance like a physical weight. One night, she woke to find his side of the bed empty. She found him in the living room, staring at the harbor lights. Can't sleep? She asked. His tattoo was visible on his collarbone, partially exposed by his unbuttoned shirt. He didn't turn. Who are you, Zara? The question froze her. I'm your wife. That's what you do. That's not who you are. He finally turned, and his eyes were colder than she had ever seen. I know you're hiding something. Her heart cracked. Tell him, her mind screamed. Tell him everything. But fear paralyzed her tongue. She had spent her entire life surrounded by people who loved her money, her name, her empire. Taejun had loved her, the woman who sold flowers, who cooked dinner, who found joy in small moments. If she told him about the Kamani Meridian Group, about the $100 billion inheritance waiting like a silent monster, would he still see her? Or would he only see another opportunity? You're tired, she whispered instead. We should sleep. She turned away before he could see her tears. 3 days later, an envelope arrived at Taejun's office. No return address. No fingerprints. Just photographs. Photographs of Zara. But not the Zara he knew. In these images, she wore designer gowns. Stood beside private jets. Attended galas in Geneva, London, Johannesburg. Shook hands with prime ministers. The final photograph showed her seated at the head of a massive conference table, surrounded by executives who looked at her like she owned the world. Because she did. A handwritten note accompanied the images. Your wife is the sole heiress of the Kamani Meridian Group. Estimated net worth, $107 billion. She has been lying to you since the day you met. Taejun's hands shook. His vision blurred. $107 billion. His entire shipping empire was worth barely $2 billion. He had married a woman whose pocket change could buy his legacy 10 times over. And she had hidden it. Why hide wealth from your husband unless you plan to use it against him? The old wounds ripped open completely. The betrayal from his past merged with this new discovery, creating a rage so pure it felt like ice. He didn't call Zara. He didn't ask for an explanation. Instead, he called his lawyers. Prepare divorce papers. Immediately, Zara discovered the divorce papers on their bedroom table. No note. No warning. Just cold legal documents demanding the end of everything she had built with him. She stood there for 17 minutes without moving. When Tae-jun returned that evening, she was waiting in the living room. Her eyes were red but dry. Her voice was steady. You want to divorce me? He didn't sit. His tattoo was visible on his wrist as he gripped the doorframe. I know what you are. What am I? A liar. The word cut through the air. $100 billion. Zara. $100 billion. And you hid it from me. She closed her eyes. I can explain. There's no explanation that justifies this level of deception. What was your plan? Wait until I was completely dependent on you, then use your empire to control my company. Control you. Her voice cracked. Tae-jun, I never wanted. Everyone wants something. His voice dropped to a whisper, which was somehow worse than screaming. I learned that lesson before you. I won't learn it again. She stood slowly, her hand instinctively touching her stomach. Now 12 weeks along with a child he still didn't know existed. If I had told you who I was, would you have married me? Or would you have married my money? The question pierced him, but his pride refused to acknowledge it. We'll never know now, he said coldly. Because you never gave me the chance to decide. He turned and walked toward the door. Sign the papers. Be out by next week. Zara didn't sign the papers. For 3 days, she stayed in the penthouse while Tae-jun disappeared into hotels and boardrooms. She didn't eat. She barely slept. She simply sat by the window, watching the harbor where his ships moved without her. On the 4th day, she collapsed. The hospital was quiet when she woke. A doctor stood beside her bed, her expression gentle but serious. Mrs. Kong, you're severely dehydrated and malnourished. In your condition, this level of stress is dangerous. Zara's hand flew to her stomach. The baby. The baby is fine. Strong heartbeat. Healthy development. The doctor paused. But you need to start taking care of yourself. For both of you. Zara exhaled shakily, tears streaming down her cheeks. Strong heartbeat. She had almost destroyed this miracle because of grief. In that moment, something shifted inside her. She had spent her life running from her inheritance, desperate to find love that wasn't transactional. She had found that love with Tae-jun, or thought she had. But he had chosen pride over truth. He had refused to listen. He had thrown away their marriage without even asking why she hid. If he couldn't love the real her, then she would stop hiding for anyone. That night, Zara made 3 phone calls. The first was to her legal team at Kamani Meridian Group. The second was to her security director in Nairobi. The third was to her grandmother, the woman who had built their empire from nothing. Bibi, Zara whispered into the phone. I'm coming home. The envelope remained on the table for 5 weeks after Zara vanished. Tae-jun didn't open it. He told himself he didn't care. He told himself he had made the right decision. He told himself the strange emptiness in his chest was satisfaction, not regret. Then the nightmares began. Every night, he saw Zara standing in her flower shop, watering lilies. Every night, she turned to look at him with those warm, patient eyes. Every night, she opened her mouth to say something. And he woke before hearing her words. 6 weeks after her disappearance, Secretary Park entered his office with unusual urgency. Sir, there's something you need to see. He placed a tablet before Tae-jun. A live news broadcast filled the screen. The headline read, Kamani Meridian Group announces record $47 billion quarterly profit. Chairwoman Zara Kamonihan addresses global investors. Taejun's breath stopped. On screen, Zara stood at a podium in Johannesburg. She wore a deep burgundy gown that draped elegantly over her visibly pregnant stomach. Her hair was swept back. Her expression was calm, powerful, commanding. She looked like a queen. Our family has spent 4 generations building bridges between Africa and Asia, Zara said, her voice carrying across the auditorium. Today, we announce our largest infrastructure partnership in history. But Taejun heard nothing else. His eyes were fixed on her stomach. The rounded curve. The protective way her hand rested there. Pregnant. His wife, his estranged wife, was pregnant. And she hadn't told him. He tore open the envelope that night. Inside, he found 2 items. The first was a photograph of an ultrasound, dated 3 months ago. A tiny heartbeat captured in black and white. The second was a handwritten letter. Taejun. By the time you read this, you'll probably know everything. You'll know about my family. My inheritance. The empire I ran from because I wanted someone to love me for myself. I was going to tell you. I had planned to tell you that night, the night you received the phone call and left. I had practiced the words 100 times. I'm not just Zara who sells flowers. I'm Zara Kamonihan, heiress to one of Africa's largest fortunes. And I'm pregnant with your child. But you never gave me the chance. You investigated me instead of asking me. You believed anonymous photographs instead of trusting your wife. You chose your pride over our marriage. I hid my wealth because I was terrified. My whole life, people saw my name and my money before they saw me. You were different. You saw me first. At least, I thought you did. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking you for anything. I just wanted you to know the truth. Not from lawyers or newspapers, but from me. The baby is yours. The love was real. The hiding was fear, not deception. I'm sorry I couldn't be braver. Zara. Taejun read the letter 7 times. Then he crumpled it in his fist and wept. He couldn't eat. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't stop watching every interview, every photograph, every mention of Zara Kamonihan. The business world marveled at her. The media adored her. African and Korean news outlets ran constant coverage of the young chairwoman who commanded a $100 billion empire while expecting her first child. His child. A child who would be born without knowing its father. The tattoo on Taejun's wrist seemed to mock him now. The baobab roots that symbolized legacy, the Korean pine that represented discipline. What was legacy without family? What was discipline without wisdom? He had thrown away both. 3 months after her disappearance, Secretary Park delivered more news. Sir, the chairwoman has arrived in Seoul. Taejun looked up sharply. Seoul. For the Asian Investment Summit. She's giving the keynote address tomorrow at the Grand Hyatt. His heart thundered. And sir. Park hesitated. She's not alone. Daesung Pharmaceuticals heir, Jean Dae-ho, has been accompanying her at every event. The media is speculating about a potential merger, or marriage. The words hit Taejun like bullets. Marriage. Another man. His pregnant wife. Something primal awakened inside him. Something he had buried beneath years of calculated control. Clear my schedule, he said quietly. For the next 2 weeks. Jean Dae-ho was everything Taejun wasn't. Charming. Publicly warm. Media-friendly. His smile graced magazine covers, and his pharmaceutical empire had recently expanded into African markets, conveniently aligning with Kamani Meridian's healthcare investments. At the summit, Dae-ho stayed close to Zara. Too close. Taejun watched from across the ballroom, his jaw tight, his gloved hands clenched at his sides. His tattoo was visible beneath his collar, pulsing with restrained fury. Zara looked radiant. Her pregnancy had reached 7 months, and she glowed with life even as her eyes carried distant sadness. She smiled at Daeho's jokes, accepted his arm when she walked, allowed him to introduce her to investors. But Taejun noticed what others didn't. Her smile never reached her eyes. Her hand never lingered on Daeho's arm. Her gaze drifted toward exits, toward shadows. Then she saw him. Across the crowded ballroom, their eyes locked. Time stopped. Zara's expression flickered through shock, pain, longing, then hardened into composure. She looked away, said something to Daeho, and allowed him to lead her toward another group of investors. Taejun didn't move. But inside, a storm was breaking. He couldn't approach her. Not yet. Not until he understood who had sent those anonymous photographs. Not until he knew why someone had wanted to destroy his marriage. Taejun activated his intelligence network, the underground connections he had spent 15 years building. Within days, information began flowing. The anonymous sender had been traced to an offshore account connected to Daesung Pharmaceuticals. Jean Daeho had sent the photographs. Taejun's blood ran cold. Further investigation revealed the truth. Daeho had been pursuing Zara for years. When she married Taejun, he had waited. When she became pregnant, he had acted. The photographs. The anonymous tip. The destruction of her marriage. It had all been orchestrated to isolate Zara, break her, and position himself as her savior. Taejun had been played. And in his pride, he had become the weapon. That night, Taejun began his silent protection. He hired discreet security teams to shadow Zara without her knowledge. He investigated Daeho's business practices, discovering fraud, corruption, and a conspiracy to eventually seize control of Kamani Meridian through strategic marriage. He didn't tell Zara. He simply watched, protected. From the shadows, where he had always thrived. The abandoned greenhouse stood at the edge of Seoul, once a botanical research center, now forgotten. Zara came alone. She had received an anonymous message claiming to have information about her late father's death, a wound that had never healed. Her security team had advised against coming alone. She came anyway. What she found was Jean Daeho. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said, stepping from the shadows. "Your father used to visit greenhouses like this, researching plants for pharmaceutical development, before his unfortunate accident." Zara's blood froze. "What do you know about my father?" Daeho smiled coldly. "I know everything. I know he discovered evidence of fraud in our joint ventures. I know he was going to expose my family. And I know," he stepped closer, "that his car accident wasn't an accident." Zara's legs trembled, but she didn't retreat. "You killed him. I prevented a scandal. And now." He reached for her arm. "I'm going to finish what I started. One marriage, one merger, and the entire Kamani empire becomes mine." His grip tightened. Zara's free hand moved toward her stomach, protecting her child instinctively. "The papers are already prepared," Daeho continued. "You'll sign them, or I'll release evidence that your estranged husband was responsible for your father's death. The scandal will destroy his company and devastate you. But if you marry me..." A door exploded open. Taejun stepped through, flanked by armed security. His tattoo was fully visible on his neck, his expression colder than death. "Remove your hand," he said quietly, "or lose it." Daeho's confidence wavered. "Kong Taejun. This is none of your... She is my wife." The words came like thunder. "That is my child. And you..." His gloved hands flexed. Made the mistake of threatening both. The confrontation ended without bloodshed, but only barely. Daeho's security was neutralized. His schemes were exposed. The evidence of his family's crimes, including her father's murder, was handed to international authorities. Within weeks, the Daesung Empire crumbled. But Zara barely noticed. She stood at the greenhouse window, watching rain streak the glass. Behind her, Taejun waited. You knew, she finally said. About the photographs. About Daeho's plan. I discovered it too late. But you came. She turned to face him, tears streaming down her cheeks. After everything I hid from you, after everything you believed, you still came. He stepped closer slowly, as if approaching something sacred. I read your letter. Her breath caught. I read it 7 times. Then I spent 3 months hating myself for every word I said to you. For every question I didn't ask. For every moment I chose suspicion over trust. His voice cracked. You hid your wealth because you wanted real love. And when you finally found it, I proved I was no different from everyone else who only saw your name. Zara shook her head. I should have told you. You shouldn't have had to tell me. I should have believed in the woman I married. Instead, I believed anonymous photographs from a man who wanted to destroy us. He reached for her hands. His gloves were gone. His bare fingers trembled as they touched hers. I can never undo what I did. But if you let me, I will spend the rest of my life protecting you. Our child. Our family. Her tears fell onto their joined hands. Why? She whispered. Why fight for someone who lied to you? Because the lie was fear. His forehead touched hers. And the love was real. Reconciliation did not happen in a single moment. It happened in thousands of small ones. Taejun visited her flower shop for the first time. He didn't speak. He simply sat in the corner, watching her arrange lilies, learning the rhythm of her real life. He held her hand during ultrasounds. He memorized the sound of their child's heartbeat. He whispered promises to her stomach when he thought she was sleeping. He attended her business meetings, not as a billionaire's husband, but as her partner. He learned about her empire not with jealousy, but with awe. She built this. She protected it. She carried this burden alone for years. One night, 8 months into her pregnancy, Zara woke to find him crying. Taejun. He didn't hide his tears. I almost lost you. Because of pride. Because of fear. Because I refused to ask questions that mattered. She pulled him close. You didn't lose me. I came so close. But you came back. They held each other until dawn, speaking without words, healing without rushing. The hospital room was quiet except for the sound of new life. Zara held their daughter against her chest, tears streaming down her face. Taejun sat beside her, his hand covering hers, his expression shattered and rebuilt into something softer. She's perfect, Zara whispered. She has your eyes. She has your stubbornness. Taejun laughed, a sound Zara hadn't heard in almost a year. What will we name her? He asked. Zara looked at their daughter's tiny face, then at the man who had chosen pride, then chosen redemption, then chosen love. Hannah, she said softly. It means one in Korean, and happiness in Swahili. Taejun's eyes glistened. One happiness, he repeated. Our one happiness. 3 months later, they stood before family and friends in a private ceremony overlooking Busan Harbor. Not a wedding. A renewal. A promise remade with open eyes and honest hearts. Zara wore white, not the expensive designer gown her family offered, but a simple dress she had chosen herself. Her daughter slept peacefully in her grandmother's arms. Taejun wore a traditional Korean hanbok with subtle African patterns woven into the fabric, a symbol of their merged heritage. His tattoo was visible on his collarbone, no longer a mark of hidden grief, but of earned legacy. Before the officiant could speak, Taejun raised his hand. I need to say something first. He turned to face the small gathering, Zara's family, his colleagues, the employees from both their empires. 14 months ago, I stood in a courtroom and filed for divorce. I believed my wife had deceived me. I believed I was protecting myself from betrayal. His voice wavered but held. I was wrong. He turned to Zara, taking both her hands. Zora Kamonihan did not hide her wealth to control me. She hid it because her entire life, people saw her money before they saw her heart. She wanted someone to love her, not her name, not her inheritance, not her empire. Tears streamed down his face. I could have been that person. I should have been that person. Instead, I became exactly what she feared. He dropped to his knees before her, before everyone. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I'm asking for it anyway. Not because I've earned it, but because losing you taught me that love isn't earned. It's chosen. Every day. Through truth. Through trust. Through staying when leaving would be easier. Zora pulled him to his feet. I forgive you, she whispered. I forgave you the moment you walked into that greenhouse to save us. They kissed, not with passion, but with promise. The applause that followed was soft, respectful, sacred. 6 months later, Kamani Meridian Group announced its largest partnership in history, a joint venture with Kong Shipping to develop sustainable trade routes between Africa and Asia. The press called it a business merger. Insiders knew the truth. It was a family legacy united. In their Busan home, no longer a cold penthouse but a warm house filled with laughter, Taejun sat on the floor with baby Hannah. She grabbed his tattooed wrist, her tiny fingers tracing the baobab roots and Korean pine. She likes your tattoo, Zora observed from the doorway. She has excellent taste. Zora laughed, settling beside them. Humble as always. Taejun pulled her close, their daughter between them, their future stretching forward without shadows. Thank you, he murmured against her hair. For what? For hiding who you were long enough for me to fall in love with who you are. And for forgiving me when I almost destroyed everything. Zora tilted her face up to his. Thank you for coming back. I'll always come back. Outside, the harbor sparkled under sunset light. Ships moved across the water, his ships, their ships, carrying goods between continents their daughter would one day inherit. But inside their home, wealth meant nothing. Only love. Only truth. Only the family they had fought to keep. In the end, the $100 billion didn't matter. What mattered was the courage to hide nothing, the wisdom to ask before assuming, and the grace to forgive before it was too late. Some secrets are kept out of fear. Some silence is born from love. And sometimes, the greatest fortune isn't the billions you inherit. It's the family you choose to rebuild. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe for more stories of love, redemption, and second chances.